Sleep's so important, and sadly, what's often given is a prescription for sleep medication, which doesn't work for very long and is also addictive. So any opportunity I have, I want to really emphasize the addictiveness of these medications and to be very careful before considering accepting a prescription. And they were only meant for short-term use. So it's a really serious problem. It's ruined many lives. And we have so many wonderful natural ways to sleep. First of all, chamomile tea, and so many herbs, valerian, for example. And there's so many formulas on the market. You don't even have to know the names of the various individual herbs. And they come in formulas, you take them at bedtime, and it really helps you to relax and to fall asleep.
Welcome to the Woman's Doctor podcast, helping empower women to embrace their body and soul's full potential. I'm your host, Dr. Trevor Cates, and after 22 years of working with patients, I found the answers to our health struggles are much deeper than most people realize. To help explore this, I'm interviewing colleagues and other wellness experts to get to the root cause so women can realize their true beauty and be informed decision makers for themselves and their loved ones. Millions of people in the United States are taking antidepressants, and women are prescribed more antidepressants than men. But research has shown these medications over time don't improve quality of life, and they can come with numerous side effects. There's so much more we can do to support our moods, so that's what we're diving in today's podcast. Dr. Hyla Cass is a nationally acclaimed expert in the fields of integrative medicine, psychiatry, and addiction recovery with over 30 years of clinical experience. She has also influenced thousands more with her writing, speaking, and media appearances. You may have seen Dr. Cass in shows like The Dr. Oz Show, E! Entertainment, and The View. Dr. Cass was interviewed for my Hormones, Health, and Harmony docu-series, but much of her interview didn't make it into the docu-series, so I wanted to share some important parts in today's podcast. We're covering which neurotransmitters and hormones impact women's mood, how Dr. Cass knows based upon a person's cravings which of these they're low in, and how to naturally support our hormones and neurotransmitters with specific supplements, dietary changes, and stress management practices. You can learn how to access this entire interview plus others at hormoneseries.com. I hope you enjoy this episode of the Woman's Doctor podcast. What do women need to know about their mood that they often don't?
The really difficult thing about women and their moods is that as soon as they mention something about depression, anxiety, whatever, the doctor will never ask any more details. Is there some situation in your life? Is it temporary? Is it something you want to talk about? Maybe a referral to a therapist. Instead, it's a prescription for antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication, or if there's a sleep issue, sleep medication. And that is really destructive.
How do hormones play a role in mood?
It's just amazing that doctors do not pay attention to the role of hormones in mood. So to treat PMS or menopausal symptoms with antidepressants and a whole slew of psychiatric medications makes absolutely no sense, because the issue is a hormonal imbalance. It's a hormonal shift. And we can work with the hormones, and we can work with nature. I mean, we are from nature, and we have the best pharmacy within us. So giving these psychiatric medications for hormonal imbalances just doesn't make sense.
What is the difference between hormones and neurotransmitters?
Neurotransmitters and hormones have a lot of similarities, and they interact with each other. So they're both chemical messengers, but the hormones, which are released in very tiny quantities, will work remotely. They'll work in different parts of the body from where they're made, whereas the neurotransmitters are made in neurons, and they travel a much shorter distance. And they'll be made in a neuron, and then they'll go through what's called the synapse, or the space between the neurons, and hit the receptor on the next neighboring neuron. And that's how they operate.
How are neurotransmitters involved with our mood, especially for women?
Neurotransmitters are the messengers that tell us how to feel. They are the root of feelings. So serotonin makes us feel calm, self-confident, not craving. I can tell you the absence of serotonin has women feeling depressed, anxious, craving sugar, having difficulty sleeping, just not feeling very well. And it's unfortunately very common to have low serotonin.
Are there any other neurotransmitters besides serotonin that play a role in our mood?
The most common deficiency seems to be serotonin, but there's also, of course, GABA. And GABA we need for dampening the neurotransmitters. Because, for example, you have dopamine, which is stimulating. It's for focus and attention and doing things and getting up and being motivated. But you don't want it to just keep going, so GABA comes along and kind of modulates it and moderates it. So if you don't have enough GABA, there's a tendency to be anxious, and it's also more of a physical anxiety. It's muscle tension, it's body tension, whereas the anxiety that you have with a lack of serotonin is more of a worry anxiety, maybe even some obsessiveness with it.
In your clinical practice, how do you help determine which neurotransmitters are deficient?
The way I determine what neurotransmitters are deficient is really in taking history. And I have them fill out a questionnaire, a mood questionnaire that covers things like anxiety, sleep, motivation, sugar cravings, feeling hangry, when they haven't eaten, feeling like they'll bite someone's head off because of this total low blood sugar. So I really can tell that way. Also by what substances they're craving. People who prefer stimulants, anything from caffeine to cocaine, they're going to be low in dopamine. People who are craving alcohol and tend to want tranquilizers, they're low in GABA. So that you can really tell.
What do you do to balance or optimize neurotransmitters?
The good news is that we can absolutely affect the neurotransmitters. And that's so superior to the usual thing, which is trying to fool Mother Nature with psychiatric medications. Because what happens is they'll wear out, and they'll also cause brain changes, which leads to a kind of addiction. And it's very difficult to get off these medications. And there really needs to be full disclosure when someone is put on them so that they know what they're getting into. Because so much of my own professional life has been in helping people who were unable on their own, and you can't really do it on your own, to wean themselves off the medications. And the doctors just don't really know how to do it. So we have the way we can work with the neurotransmitters is to supply what are called neurotransmitter precursors. That is the raw materials that we need in order to make the neurotransmitters. And we have this great chemical factory in us. It's like a great pharmacy. And if we know how to impact it, we get the result we want. So if you're low in dopamine, you take tyrosine, and you also need cofactors like magnesium and some B vitamins. It's a real cocktail. Any kind of it's like baking a cake, you want to have all the right ingredients. And when you do that, you get a beautiful cake. Or by the same token, you can get really nice neurotransmitters and feel better. So, or if you're low in GABA, you take GABA. GABA is both a neurotransmitter and an amino acid. And we also have theanine and taurine that are calming amino acids. And for some people, the GABA works really well. And for others, they need some theanine either on top of it or instead. So we have an armamentarium. And it's not complicated. And I really, really want people to know about this, that they can have control over their moods.
Does diet play a role in our mood?
Diet is paramount with mood. Because I'll talk about taking vitamins and amino acids, but to begin with, you have to have the basic good diet, nourishing diet, without all the toxic, bad things that people are eating, and have sufficient complex carbohydrates, not simple carbs, not sugar, but complex like legumes, whole grains, plenty of fat. You know, our brain is 80% fat, and we need to feed the brain. We need to make brain cells. So good fats from, say, salmon, avocado, and also that fish will provide protein. So we need to have certainly we need protein, because protein breaks down into amino acids, and the amino acids are what are the precursors to the neurotransmitters. They're the building blocks.
Are there any myths that you'd like to bust around women, medications, and mood?
Well, another issue with women and mood are birth control pills. I mean, when these young women are put on birth control pills, they have no hormones, and hormones are essential to good mood. Estrogen controls our serotonin and dopamine. Progesterone controls GABA. It's just terrible that they don't have access to very important elements to regulating mood. Also, there's a depletion of vitamin C, which we need for the immune system and for mood. And very often women on the pill are depressed, and what happens? They're put on antidepressants. And this is I don't even know what to say, because I find it so discouraging. And we've known about this for so many years, and hopefully we're making some inroads. I hope so. But I would like to see this trend of medicating everything to stop and really go back to nature, because we operate best when we are treated in a natural way.
What is your favorite hormone?
Favorite hormone? Well, it's like an orchestra. Can you say, well, what instrument of the orchestra do you like best? They work together so beautifully, like a symphony. And when the symphony is working right, it's beautiful. There's beautiful music. And when you are low in any particular hormone, you're going to get cacophony, or you won't have the richness of the full symphony. So that's really where I'm coming from. It's really the synergy of all of the hormones that's so beautiful.
Do neurotransmitters play a role in our appetite and cravings?
We need serotonin in order to feel satiety. And very often when women are low in serotonin, and particularly toward evening, they start craving. And what are they craving? Not broccoli. They are craving chocolate cake, ice cream, the things that are going to raise their blood sugar, because blood sugar actually helps. The sugar will actually help the tryptophan cross over the blood-brain barrier into the brain, and the brain is asking for serotonin. So if you give tryptophan or 5-hydroxytryptophan, then that's really going to help the craving, because you're not going to need to eat a bunch of sugar in order to get your tryptophan into the brain and your serotonin level up.
How does stress affect men and women differently?
Stress affects men and women differently. The fight or flight happens in both to an extent, but more with the male of the species. And I don't mean just men, but male of all the species. And women tend to bond and protect under stress. So there is that difference, a psychological difference when the stress hormones come online. Then with stress, you deplete neurotransmitters. And when you have depleted neurotransmitters, you're going to be anxious and depressed. So very important in stress, instead of saying, oh, well, you're anxious and depressed, that's because you're stressed. Wait, you're anxious and depressed because you're stressed, because you're depleting your neurotransmitter precursors. You've lost your neurotransmitters. You've used up your magnesium and your B vitamins. So again, what we do is we give magnesium and B vitamins and amino acids to shore up the neurotransmitter production, so that those effects of the stress are made better.
How important is stress management?
Stress management is paramount. We know that 90% of doctor visits are related to stress. Stress is very dangerous. We know that it raises blood pressure, can cause cardiac irregularities, it affects every part of the body. And I'll talk about the brain. It'll actually deplete neurotransmitters. And depleted neurotransmitters lead to anxiety and depression. And it's really important then not to just say, oh, it's just stress. But we need to restore the neurotransmitters by giving the raw materials that go into making the neurotransmitters, and then that will improve mood.
How does stress management impact our neurochemical balance, and which types of stress management are most effective?
When we meditate and calm down, we are actually raising GABA, lowering stress hormones like cortisol. Because when we're in a stress state, fight or flight, we're pumping out adrenaline, noradrenaline, and that's important when we're fleeing from wild animal. But we don't have that anymore. We're not running away from wild animals. We're sitting at a desk, sitting at a computer. We have a million thoughts in our mind. We have deadlines, lots of responsibility, and there's no escape. I mean, the natural way to deal with stress is that we see this in animals. They'll go through they'll be chased by another animal and they manage to escape. Then they go through these repetitive movements that shake off, literally they shake off the stress hormones. And they're fine. They don't sit and ruminate, oh, wow, I was just chased by that lion and I got away. Wow, that was so bad. They don't do that, right? They shake it off and go about their business. So what we do is we have no escape. We just continue and we ruminate and it just compounds itself. And these stress hormones just keep circulating. So unless we institute some sort of calming mechanism, we're in trouble. So we need to do things like exercise. And that's exactly what the animals are doing when they're shaking off their stress. We need to exercise. We need bonding. We need friends. We need to be able to talk about. We need outlets for things that are bothering us. We can't just keep it in because it circulates on itself. So all the techniques that we have, meditation, and it may be hard to meditate when you're stressed. So you may need to do a walking meditation, a moving meditation, yoga. And all of these things help to lower cortisol, which is the chronic stress hormone. And it's useful when we need it, but boy, we have far too much of it running through us and causing a lot of havoc in a lot of our systems.
How is sleep important for a woman's health?
Sleep is so important for women's health. And we've prided ourselves on, I can get by on 4 hours sleep, 5 hours sleep, just because there's so much to do. And it's not a good idea. We really need it. We need restorative sleep. There's stages of sleep. And there's deep sleep, delta sleep, where we restore our body. There's REM sleep. This describes the brain waves that we go through. And during REM sleep, we're dreaming. And dreaming is important. It's an outlet. It's a way of consolidating information and relieving stress. And we're cheating ourselves when we don't get enough deep sleep and we don't get enough REM sleep. We're really not going to be functioning well during the day. So you may feel that you're cheating time by shaving off some hours of sleep, but you're really cheating yourself.
What are some natural tips and tools for helping women sleep?
Sleep's so important, and sadly, what's often given is a prescription for sleep medication, which doesn't work for very long and is also addictive. So any opportunity I have, I want to really emphasize the addictiveness of these medications and to be very careful before considering accepting a prescription. And they were only meant for short-term use. So it's a really serious problem. It's ruined many lives. And we have so many wonderful natural ways to sleep. First of all, chamomile tea, and so many herbs, valerian, for example. And there's so many formulas on the market. You don't even have to know the names of the various individual herbs. And they come in formulas, you take them at bedtime, and it really helps you to relax and to fall asleep. And my latest favorite is hemp oil extract, or CBD, which has gotten a lot of press. And you might wonder, is it just placebo effect? Is it hype? What is it? And in fact, it's part of what's called the endocannabinoid system. So it's actually a very important, this is a very important system. And the whole reason for the endocannabinoid system, which we only discovered in the 90s, is to help us to rest, to protect, to relax, and to forget, which is amazing. And it's a communication system throughout the entire body. It connects the immune system, the gut, the brain, hormones, heart, lungs. kidneys. It connects every part of the body, all the systems to do those things, to rest, protect, forget. It's a very caring part of our systems that we didn't know about till the 90s. That's very useful for helping you fall asleep is melatonin. Now, we know that we need serotonin for calming and a good mood, and serotonin is converted to melatonin. And very often when people are depleted in serotonin, they're not making enough melatonin and they can't sleep. So giving something like 3 milligrams of melatonin is very useful. The precursor to the neurotransmitter or chemical messenger serotonin is 5-HTP, and that comes from tryptophan. So tryptophan converts to 5-HTP, which converts down the line to serotonin. And so why would you do one or the other? Well, tryptophan is less concentrated, like 500 milligrams of tryptophan is like 100 milligrams of 5-HTP. So that would be more efficient. And it crosses the blood-brain barrier a lot more easily. In order for tryptophan to cross the blood-brain barrier, you need to add a little bit of carbohydrate, whereas you don't have to do that with 5-HTP. The other thing is 5-HTP can be stimulating for people who have high cortisol. So if you tend to wake up during the night, it's possible that you have high cortisol, in which case you would not give 5-HTP, but you would give tryptophan. So you wouldn't be raising the person's cortisol.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Woman's Doctor podcast, be sure to share it with the women in your life and rate and review the show. And to learn all about balancing your hormones, join us for the Hormones, Health, and Harmony 9-part documentary series at hormoneseries.com.